Hello, gentle viewer. This is your resplendent host here with the Onebro Challenge, Episode 1. In this series, I'm going to be doing the challenge where you cannot level up, and you have to start at level 1, which is the Pyromancer class. And as you can see here, this is how you do a lunging attack. Oh, well, if you actually hit him. So, I'm really not sure how that happened right there. That's a massive fail. So for this challenge, it's just going to be pretty basic. I start at level 1, I cannot level, but I can do anything else. I can use any weapons or armor or rings or anything. Any consumables, pretty much everything's open except I can't level. So, here you see that this boss is actually kind of a pain if you don't get that first plunging attack in on him. For those who don't know, if you manage to kill him the very first time you see him, you get his weapon there, the Demon Hammer. It's an alright strength weapon, not one of my favorites. And you can actually do it your very first playthrough if you forego the Master Key and get the Fire Bombs instead. It's actually pretty easy to kill him that way. But really, I would never suggest that. Getting the Master Key is way too important. So I just want to note that one of the main reasons for me doing this challenge is because Dark Souls 2 is coming out, and I just figured that this is one of the things that I never actually did. I always theorized that it would be... I know I'm kind of sounding like a dick here, but I honestly figured that it would be really easy because of the Pyromancer glove. So... And it's not as easy as I thought it would be, but it's definitely not that hard either. It sounds really impressive when you say it. Oh, I beat Dark Souls at level 1. It sounds really impressive, but actually going through it is really not that tough if you really know the game mechanics. So as you can see there, you get to see him jump from that tower if you look up there, which I always thought was cool. I like how the bosses in this game just kind of don't materialize out of thin air. They actually come from somewhere. I love how the demon looks up at you. Like he's like, hey, get down. And I just bash him in the balls here. And you can see him stagger right there. That's because I broke his poise. Every enemy in the game has poise. Usually you can tell how much poise they have based on what they look like. For example, a big goat demon looking thing probably has pretty high poise here. And he's giant, so... but if you encounter an enemy that's wearing a lot of armor, they probably have really high poise. For example, like the undead in Undeadburg that aren't really wearing any armor, they don't have any poise. So any attack you do on them makes them flinch. And that's kind of how it was in Demon Souls. So here I'm just showing how easy it is to kill this guy. Even though you can't do a riposte, you can still parry him, which makes it incredibly easy because he cannot hurt you. As you can see here, I already have the Grass Crush shield. That increases your stamina regeneration, and I pretty much just use that during the entire game. This shield doesn't block 100% of physical attacks, only 95%, but that's plenty. So here's the guy who kills the Firekeeper here, if you let him live. And so I always end up killing him. And I just found out that if you kick NPCs, they don't aggro, so you can just kick him right off the edge and he never fights back. Then you just exit out, come back, and there's your ring. So I just wanted to show some of my mini-boss fights here. Any enemy that doesn't respawn, I kind of consider a mini-boss. And these guys are pretty tough. My general strategy is to get close to them. They have a really hard time hitting you when you're close to them. Oh, and at this point, I already have my club leveled up a little bit. And right there, I just activated the red Tearstone ring I had on. So here comes some massive damage. That ring is so cheap in a lot of ways. You can do a lot of crazy stuff with that damage increase. Like if you ever see a video of somebody one-shotting a boss, it's always with that ring. So here's the Moonlight Butterfly. I actually didn't intend on fighting this boss when I did. I was kind of just running through the zone. I was picking up the Elite Knight Armor. Because I thought I'd use it for its poise at one point. But, so I just ended up running in the boss room and fighting the boss. A lot of these magic attacks can be just straight dodged. As you can see, you can roll through a lot of them. If you get the Crush Shield, which is the shield that you receive from the guy who gives you the Estus Flask at the beginning of the game, when you go back to that area, he gives you the Crush Shield, and it has 80% magic block, I believe, and so you can block the majority of those attacks. So the Moonlight Butterfly is another one of those enemies that appears later in the game, in the Crystal Caverns. So it's just kind of one of those lore things that's kind of interesting. For example, in this area, you have the Moonlight Butterfly and you have the Six-Eyed Channeler in the Gargoyle Tower. And both of these things come from Seath area. So there's some speculation that Seath was in the area or sent his goons or whatnot to collect samples or people or whatever. So, but a lot of that kind of lore that doesn't really, that's a lot of like speculation kind of fun. And the people who made Dark Souls even said that that's kind of what they're going for. They don't fill in all the gaps so that you can. And I think that's kind of a cool way to do this storytelling. So, yeah, this boss is pretty easy. You can't, if you get caught with one of those big magic blasts, though, it's pretty much over. Yeah. Give it a little cheer. So, here I am clearing out this area, and I decided that I would go kill the boar, because I didn't want to get attacked by it later. And so things get pretty bananas pretty fast here. My original thought was that I would throw down the Alluring Skull, then do a plunging attack on the boar, but things don't really work out that way. And I actually, I really do enjoy clearing out areas of all of the enemies. And that's one of the things that I'm really hoping that Dark Souls 2 does a lot better. And I actually have some stuff in here to demonstrate like how bad it really is, how it's way too easy to run through every zone instead of fighting everything. And it kind of just turns the game into kind of like a boss rush, where you just don't fight any enemies except for a couple of mini bosses and the bosses. So, and actually that's one of the things that I really like about Demon Souls, is that in a lot of the areas, it's really hard to just run through the area. For example, 4-1 with the rolling skeletons, that's a great example. If you try to run through that, those skeletons will put it right in your butt. So you're pretty much forced to fight them. Yeah, this boar gets a little nuts. And I try for the backstab there, it doesn't really work out. But these kind of situations are really fun when you're trying to fight a bunch of enemies at once. That's when Dark Souls really gets hard. When the fights are one-on-one, things are pretty reasonable. But throw in a couple more enemies and things just get out of hand really fast. I'm thinking here that I'm so tempted to go for the butt. This is the only boar in the game that you can backstab like that, by the way. The other boars have a metal plate around their anus. And they way massively increase that boar helm drop because it's a requirement for one of the achievements. And before in the earlier patches, you could easily go through the game 2 or 3 times and never see it, even killing every boar. So here is Pinwheel, which I suggest everybody try to kill as early as possible. Mostly because it's fun and he's easy and you get the right of kindling. So, and the theory about this area is that they intended this area to be just as viable as going to Undeadburg, which is why Pinwheel is such an easy boss. But later in development, they decided to change that around, and so they upped the challenge of all of the enemies in the area, but never changed Pinwheel to be harder. So, yeah, so that's the theory behind that. And it makes a lot of sense. So here's our good friend, the Capra Demon. And this is pretty much an exploit since he can't really hurt you when you're up here. It does make this boss a hell of a lot easier. Not really sure how they didn't catch this during development. It's just such an obvious place to run to. Or maybe they did it on purpose, who knows. And here I go thinking that I'm actually going to be able to cast Soul Arrow on him and do some damage. Yeah, here's a little spoiler. None of the magic spells do any kind of real damage without putting points in intelligence. So that's actually another beef I have with this game, is that it's way too easy to get very, very, very powerful even at a low level because of elemental weapons and pyromancy. Since their strength isn't determined by your stats. And this just makes it a lot easier to grief at low levels. So right now, my character at level 1, if I was invading Undeadburg, I could pretty much just get kills there all day. Once you're level 1 and have a lightning weapon or like charged up pyromancy, you can pretty much just go like crap on level 1s in Undeadburg all day. So after I kill him, I decide that I'm gonna just run into the depths real quick so that I can grab the upgrade item. So here's a little trick that I use that I wanted to show you guys so that I can just grab this upgrade item and then get out real fast so I don't have to mess around with all of these enemies. But I wasn't really thinking when I came in here, and I ended up having to come back to set the Pyromancer guy free. So, but anyway, but here it is. You can jump on there, and then there's the treasure chest with it right there. And you can usually just open it up and grab it real quick, but these guys were not cooperating. I found my opening. Let's get out of here. And then I decide I should go kill that that unique enemy, the giant freaking rat, and get some humanity. One thing that the Souls games do very, very well is having a lot of unique enemies that you only see a couple times in the game. Like this giant rat, there's only one in the entire game. Right there. Oh, okay. Well, apparently that's it. Alright, see you next time.